Hello, this is Burke Lyle here. I'm recording on opening day, and Major League Baseball has started. I mean, the headlines around Major League Baseball: Garrett Cole strikes out 11 San Francisco Giants today. The Giants playing the Yankees in New York. I mean, it's funny. They used to be right across the river in Manhattan, not that far. Polo Grounds, Yankee Stadium, not that far apart, but they would never play each other unless it was the World Series. That's opening day right now, and just want to go through like the preview for the 2023 season. Just want to go through who I think is going to win each division. Let's start with the National League first, since they were the first league that started over the American League. National League East, I'm going to go with the Braves. Now, granted, as I'm speaking, I'm recording right after the Braves-Nationals game ended. And with that, sure, injuries happen. Max Fried left today's game, so you wonder if that's the long-term. Braves also felt Kyle Wright. But the Mets also, Justin Verlander got placed on the IL, and I was listening to his interview, and what he said is, I think, is dealt with, is like kind of lat, shoulder areas, dealt those injuries before during spring training, didn't want to take any chances. Whether it's the 10 or 15-day IL, might miss a few starts, but really it's about getting him healthy in April. The Mets also have Max Scherzer. So again, we weren't, and you think about the last 2 years where you had the combination of Scherzer or Verlander, or Scherzer or DeGrom, and DeGrom got hurt about a year ago and ended up missing 3-4 months with an injury. And then Scherzer spent some time on the IL last year, and then here we are this year. Verlander ends up going on the IL right away. So the Mets, and not to mention Edwin Diaz. The Phillies, no Rhys Hoskins, almost certainly for the whole year. No Bryce Harper for who knows how long. Could be 2 months, could be 3. He's not on the 60-day IL. So that means maybe he could come back sometime in May. We'll see. Late May, maybe Memorial Day. That's about 60 days from now. So Phillies look to be a third place team right now. I mean, they did sign Trey Turner. They did go to the World Series last year. I mean, again, last year the Braves won 101. The Mets won 101. It came down to a tiebreaker. Braves won that tiebreaker. The Phillies won 87 last year. Yet the Phillies went to the World Series by beating the Braves. So the Phillies went farther than any other NL East team. So either one of them could win the division by the end of the year. Sure, there could be injuries right now. The Braves could be without Kyle Wright and Max Fried for parts of April. Who knows? We don't know how serious the Max Fried injury is. But at the end of the day, just based off talent, age, and stuff like that, I would say the Braves, I'm going to pick them to win the division again. A lot of others pick the Mets. I think a few pick the Phillies. Either way, there's a very strong division when you have two teams that win 100 games and you have a team that goes to the World Series. The third place team in your division goes to the World Series, so a very strong division. For sure, the Marlins, yes, good pitching for sure with Sandy Alcantara, defending Cy Young champion. They have a lot of pitching. What they've struggled to do is hit more on the offensive side. And the Nationals, losing 107 games last year, just 3 years. That was last year. This season will mark 4 since they won the World Series. So the East, the Braves. The Central, I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I think the Cubs are up and coming. They could surprise people this year. The Brewers, yes, they have good pitching. Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff now. Burns and Woodruff and Peralta, I think they each have 2 years left on their contracts. They all kind of came up right around the same time. So you wonder with them what they'll do with those pitchers. The Brewers are not big market. I don't think they can afford to give one, much less 2 pitchers, big contracts in Burns and Woodruff. So the Brewers took a step back last year, 86 and 76 again. What if they didn't trade Josh Hader? What if they could have won a few more games? Well, they could have made it to the playoffs instead of the Phillies. That one game difference separating the Brewers and the Phillies made the difference between one team went to the World Series and the other wild card team, the Padres, a few games above that, went to the LCS. So I'm going to say it's the Cardinals. Now, weakness is their pitching staff. Adam Wainwright is 42, is on the IL right now. Jack Flaherty's had a lot of injuries the last few years, so you really don't know what their rotation is going to be like. There's a fair amount of uncertainty with that rotation. So really the Central, I think, is kind of an open division. At the end of the day, I think that division has only one playoff team like last year. I'm going to go with the Cardinals. The West, the Dodgers have taken a step back. Or you could say that. I mean, it's early. They won 111 games last year. Yet, they've lost a fair amount of talent over the past few years. They don't have Corey Seager. They don't have Cody Bellinger anymore. They lost Trey Turner. Max Scherzer obviously left the team after 2021. Walker Buehler's out for the year with Tommy John, or will miss at least most of the year. We don't know how much of the year he will actually play in. So the Dodgers might be taking a step back. A lot of trendy picks. Picked the Padres to win the division. I'm still going to go with the Dodgers. I still think they're going to win 95 to 100 games, and I think the Padres are going to be good too. They could win 90 to potentially, I'd say, somewhere around 95, maybe a little bit less. The Padres are going to be good since you have Fernando Tatis coming back. You brought in Xander Bogaerts, Juan Soto. I mean, that trade, the Padres trading for Juan Soto, not to mention Manny Machado on a new 11-year contract. So the Padres, very popular. A fair amount of people say the Padres are going to win their first World Series title. A fair amount of people have the Padres going to the World Series. I'm going to go for the Dodgers, and I'm going to go for the Padres. And wild card teams, so obviously division winners, let's run through them quickly. Braves in the East, Cardinals in the Central, and then the Dodgers in the West. Wild cards, you'd have to go with the Mets. They spent so much money. How did they not make it to the playoffs? Last year they won 101 games. The Padres, yes, they're going back to the playoffs. They should be better than 90 wins. And then the last team, I would have to go with the Phillies. So whatever order the wild cards end up in, those have to be those wild card teams, since the Brewers, I talked about them earlier, they don't really have, their weakness has been offense. The Cubs I don't think are ready yet. The Marlins I don't think are good enough. And then the Giants, Diamondbacks. Diamondbacks are up and coming. And things could change, but just the way you look at those rosters, like look at the rosters, say the full kind of the teams who could win the division. The Padres could win their division. All the teams in the East, I think, are capable of winning their division. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. And then the Cardinals are kind of on their own. So if you look at the records of all those teams, think about the teams that were out last year. The Brewers were one of the first few teams that missed. The Giants, and then the Diamondbacks. And neither one of those teams, I don't think they compare to last year's wild card teams. Mets, Padres, Phillies. It was just a whole nother level between those teams. It wasn't particularly close. I think the National League is pretty much set. And it's all around Major League Baseball. Like a lot of the picks I saw, not just the National League, and the American League also, the experts say that the playoffs won't change. The American League may stay the same. And who knows, things could happen. Like, think about the Braves. Max Fried, what if he misses a month? And I don't know how much of a difference that'll make during the season. But right now, that's a concern. What if, Spencer Strider gets hurt? And all kinds of things. Pitching rotations are fragile. Guys can get hurt. The Yankees, I think, are down 3 starters, for an example. So a lot can happen the first month, first couple months. Teams could surprise. Teams could disappoint. There are going to be different teams that are in the playoffs this year than last year. It happens every year. I would be shocked if all the playoff teams were exactly the same from last year. I feel like there has to be some sort of difference. So we'll see what happens. Teams could take a step back. Potentially. But yeah, that's the way I see it. So now talking about the National League, I think the LCS will come down to the Braves. I'm going to go with, and this is picking right now, like trying to project, since, look, the Dodgers, they could win 100 games. They could trade for, they could add a starter at the deadline. You never know. They're so well run. Everyone contributes. I wouldn't be surprised if this Dodgers team won the West again. and ultimately went to the league championship series. I mean, it seems like we're headed for another Braves-Dodgers matchup in the LCS. So I'm going to predict the National League pennant winner will be the Atlanta Braves. Now let's go to the AL, and then after that, we'll pick our World Series matchup. So the Braves are winning the National League. In the American League East, the Yankees, I have them winning the division. Right now, they're down 3 starters. Now, what they look like 6 months from now, that is completely different. Guys get hurt early in the year. Injuries happen throughout the season. The Yankees have dealt with a fair amount of injuries over the years. But the Yankees bringing back Aaron Judge on a 9-year, $360 million contract. He's not going to play up to the contract. It's just impossible standard. He'll be playing close to 40 with that contract. He may have some more MVP caliber years, even All-Star caliber years in there, but at some point it's going to look like a bad contract. He's going to be making $40 million and being wildly overpaid at some point in that contract. Hopefully more in the backloaded years. So Braves not the Braves, so the Yankees. I have them winning the East. A lot of people are big on the Blue Jays, think they can go to the World Series. I think some even think the Blue Jays can win. The Blue Jays, they have Alek Manoah, Vlad Jr., Cy Young MVP candidates. Kevin Gausman, let's say Jose Barrios bounces back. Bo Bichette. Potentially they added Dalton Varsho as well. Alejandro Kirk's one of the better catchers right now in baseball. The Blue Jays have a very talented team. They lost in the wild card last year. They're trying to win, hopefully, multiple playoff series. I think the goal there is to win the division. And if they can win that division, I think they could potentially be the second best team in the American League. Maybe even they have the talent to be potentially the best team. Like, what if they win 98 games and say the Astros win 95? What if that happens? That could happen. I could see a path where they have the best record in the American League and they win the pennant. I could see that. Blue Jays are very talented. They won 92 last year. I think they won more this year and potentially win the division. Yankees are good too. Now they are down 3 starters. Severino, I think Montas, Frankie Montas may even be out for the year potentially. We don't know. He's probably going to miss months, not weeks. Severino, then Carlos Rodon, the Yankees' high-priced acquisition, may miss the first month of the season as well. So they're down some starters for sure. And the Rays, Tyler Glasnow, they're bringing him back. We'll have to wait about a month. We'll miss pretty much the first month of the season. The Rays are always talented. Yes, they made it to the playoffs last year. Yes, they did play poorly down the stretch. And then they lost in that wild card round to the Guardians in 2 games. Again, 2 hard-fought, low-scoring games. The Rays, they could win. They could be better next year. They're always good. They always find a way. The last 4 years, really 5 years, have had winning records and had playoff appearances. In the day, I really thought about the Blue Jays. A lot of people are big on the Blue Jays. I'm going to go back to the Yankees and winning the East. I think the Blue Jays are going to be a really good wild card team. And we'll see how far they can go in the playoffs. Central, I'm going to go back to the Guardians. The White Sox, they could bounce back after last year. Last year I had the White Sox going all the way to the World Series. I thought they'd take a step forward from what they were. I thought what happened in 2021 was kind of the start of something. They failed to build off that. The Twins, they could be interesting, potentially a wild card team, maybe win the division. They're committed to Carlos Correa. They're trying to build around Carlos Correa. What if Byron Buxton is healthy? If Byron Buxton is healthy, then he will be an MVP candidate. And again, the Twins last year won 78 games. What if they can win 88 and potentially be a wild card? Or could they win a potentially weaker division? So that'll be interesting. The Central is probably one of the worst divisions in baseball. I have the Guardians out west. The Astros, again, defending World Series champions. They ended up losing Justin Verlander, who went to the Mets. So they lost Verlander, and the Astros have lost a fair amount of talent. They lost Verlander, Cole, Zach Greinke. They used to have Charlie Morton in their rotation over the years. George Springer, Carlos Correa. But here they are, 106 last year and another World Series. They've won back-to-back pennants. And I think they're favorites in the American League to go back to the World Series once again. And Houston, their rotation's really good. They had basically 6 starters last year. I mean, Valdez, Christian Javier, Lance McCullers, by the way, is on the IL right now. Jose Urquidy, Luis Garcia, solid mid to back end rotation starters. They added Jose Abreu last year. The Astros should be better than what they were. I mean, the Astros, who knows what the record would be? They could win 100 games. Once again, the Mariners, 90 wins last year. Let's just say they add to that total. Let's just say, I mean, Julio Rodriguez, first full year, second full year. He's a rookie last year, could be an MVP candidate this year for sure. Wouldn't be shocked if he's starting the All-Star game in Seattle. I mean, this is the Mariners' opportunity to shine. They have the All-Star game in Seattle this year. They could go down and catch the Astros. One thing they've never done is they never won the pennant. This could be the year. This could be the year for the Mariners to get to the World Series. And the question is, can they win the West this year? And I think they could. I definitely think they're a playoff team. They have Julio Rodriguez, think about Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby. So they have two young starters in there as well. Really good bullpen. Now you wonder how good the rest of the lineup will be around. They trade for Teoscar Hernandez, whether he can put up a big year like he did 2 years ago, like some of those years on the Blue Jays. So again, not a great lineup, not as good as Houston's lineup, not as good as, say, I don't know, the Yankees lineup if they're healthy, or say the Braves or Dodgers, Mets. I mean, I think the Mariners had one of the worst offenses last year of any playoff team. Can their offense get better? If it can, I think they can win the West and potentially, and who knows, in 3-4 months from now, we could be talking about the Mariners as a potential World Series team, or potentially one of the bigger disappointments. The Angels, look, the Angels last year finished in third place, really fell off. They're kind of the opposite of the Phillies. They started off hot. They fired Joe Madden when they started to cool down, and then they just never really recovered. They think they just got worse throughout the year. Yeah, you have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, possibly the two best players in baseball. Certainly in the American League, you might have 2 out of the 3 best MVP candidates on your team. You need Anthony Rendon to be healthy. The Angels, you need things to come together this year. You need a lot to come together. You need a lot to work. They could be a playoff team. I mean, they really need to. I mean, Mike Trout's last playoff appearance was 2014. His third full season in the big leagues. They lost in 3 to the Royals in the first round. The ALDS that year. They haven't been in the playoffs since. The Angels, by the way, are tied with the Tigers for the longest playoff drought in baseball. Think about it. The longest playoff drought in baseball. And then the Rangers, they brought in Jacob deGrom. Yeah, they spent a lot of money. Nathan Eovaldi, they spent money on their rotation. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager over the in 2021 offseason. They've spent a lot of money to try to get to a contending level. And the Rangers, I think at the end of the year, they could be one of the first few teams that misses the playoffs. I think they'll be contenders, potentially for that wild card. It'll be interesting to see how much comes together. But like with the Angels, I think a lot needs to go well. And it's more likely than not that things, I don't know, that they'll miss the playoffs, so they won't be a playoff team. But we'll see. It's a long season. I think, again, things could look very different, say, at the end of the season than they do now. So with that said, I'm going to run through the divisional picks. So the AL East picking the Yankees, Central Guardians, West the Astros, wild card teams. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays, Mariners, and then I'm going to go with the White Sox. I think the White Sox bounce back and make it to the playoffs in some way. I think whoever wins the East, I have the Yankees. I think will play the Astros. By the way, this will be the 7th. If the Astros can win the division and advance to the LCS this year, this will be the 7th consecutive year in the ALCS. And we had a nice run of AL Central teams going to the World Series and playing in the ALCS for a little while. Well, right now, we're going to have the AL East against the Astros. This will be the 7th year in a row. I mean, the AL East, I think, has made it to the LCS. The ALCS, I think, every year since 2012, I think 11 straight years in a row. And I mean, yeah, and just I think 2011 was one of those years where they didn't, and the Yankees had a run. The Red Sox did too for a while, and I think something like 15 out of the last 16 years a team from the AL East has played. So it's just incredible. I mean, it's been a combination of the Red Sox and Yankees for the most part, but then also the Rays, the Blue Jays some too. So it will be interesting to see what happens there. But I think I think it's going to be Yankees and Astros again. And I think the Astros beat the Yankees again. I mean, if you just look at it, I feel like the teams most likely to win the pennant, I think, are Houston, number one. And then you could go with the Blue Jays. Could you say the Mariners, then the Yankees? I don't know. It's early to say right now. I mean, right now, the Yankees right now, I mean, you're looking at teams' rosters right now. I don't see the Yankees as a World Series team. Maybe the Blue Jays are more likely. Maybe the Mariners as well. I think Houston has to be number one with just a combination all-around depth. I mean, they won 107 games last year. And yeah, they may have lost Verlander, but I mean, they went to the World Series without him in 2021, and then they went to the ALCS without him again in 2020. Regular season was a whole different story. So with that in mind, I have the Astros winning the pennant. So, World Series pick as we close. I'm going to say the team that wins the World Series. Braves over Astros. Yes, Braves over Astros again. That's what I think it's going to be preseason. And things could change. But right now, preseason World Series pick, Braves over Astros. This is Burke Lyle. We'll see you next time on Atlanta and Around the Majors Baseball Show.